And so, hi everyone, I'm Archana. I am the Senior Leadership Fellow at Women Who Code. In my daytime job, I sort of work as an AI engineer. I work at this company called Continental. It's an automotive firm. So most of my work involves using either computer vision, and I also work with like data architecture. I do a lot of like data engineering as well. And so, yeah, if you have any questions about being an AI engineer or a data scientist, you can ask that too. And yeah, feel free to reach out to me even after the webinar, and really excited to meet you all. So yeah, let us look at today's agenda. This is what everyone came in for, right? So let us look at today's agenda. We'll talk about a bit of an introduction into OpenCV, why use it, why get into this topic in the first place. Then we'll talk about working with images. I'll have like good examples to show you for everything. Image processing techniques. We'll do feature detection. We'll also do working with videos. So we'll figure out how to work with videos. I'll cover Hacktoberfest. So something really good about today's webinar is we're talking about something which is completely open source. So I'll also talk about a way in which you can contribute to Hacktoberfest. I don't know if you've heard of it before, but if you haven't or was thinking to contribute, this is one place you can, and I'll tell you how. And so yeah, we'll talk about Hacktoberfest plus OpenCV. And so let me begin. Before I begin, why do OpenCV and an introduction to OpenCV is so important? So now let us look at computer vision, right? So computer vision, as you know, is the field which helps to derive meaningful information from images. Now, how many of you have actually worked with computer vision before? Am I dealing with folks who haven't worked of it? Maybe have heard of it but haven't worked of it? Like, you can let me know in the chat. You can use like a B symbol to let me know if you've worked with with oh, you've worked. So a couple of people have worked with computer vision as such, or is this your first time? You can also let me know if it's your first time. It's completely fine. As I said, it's completely beginner friendly. So I really want you to have a chance to learn here. So feel free to let me know if it's your first time as well. So yeah, thank you so much for dropping in your messages. And so yeah, so computer vision is, like, as I said, one field where you try to derive meaningful information from images. One more thing computer vision is used for is for object detection, image classification, and graphic rendering. So what does this mean? So we use computer vision even for a variety of applications, something as simple as object detection, right? Does the image have a particular object? Like if you're detecting if an image has a phone, for example, so that is object detection. You can also do image classification. I show you an image of a cat versus a dog, you're able to differentiate it. That's image classification. And there's also graphic rendering and a lot of graphics which also involves computer vision. And the first step to doing computer vision, the computer vision when we talk about is like a very big field, right? But if you want to enter into it, the first step for doing that is to understand how to do basic functions with images. Because yeah, you could go ahead, build models, you could do a lot of detection and classification, but underneath all that, you will be doing basic functions, right? You'll be trying to understand images. And for doing that, you need to do image processing. You need to, for example, get the image. You need to, get frames from cameras, frames from videos. All of that has to be done using OpenCV, and OpenCV is like widely used in the industry. And a few more things about OpenCV is that it's like a cross-platform. So it's used to develop real-time computer vision application. It mainly focuses on image processing, video capture, and analysis. And OpenCV is like a huge open source library. I think it was started by Intel. It was originally developed by Intel, and currently it's being maintained by another company. But yeah, it's specifically meant for real-time computer vision. And I can tell you for a fact that it's widely used. I remember we were trying to do something using a very advanced application, for example, NVIDIA. And we were trying to basically do something with images, especially get images like in a concurrent manner. What we realized in the end, and this is something that I actually used in the industry, was we ended up using OpenCV, because OpenCV's way of doing it was much, much simpler. So what you're going to be learning today is something which is widely used by the industry, even though it's open sourced and it seems to be doing something which is a lot more developer friendly. It's still widely used in the industry as such. So yeah, I hope I've got you hyped up for OpenCV, right? So let us jump right onto it. And today's webinar, I'll be talking again about the basic functions, but I will not go too much into the detail of the math. So you guys don't have to worry like, oh, she's going to be talking about images, it's going to be math. No, I'm going to be talking about it in the programmatical sense and how exactly to use it. And that's what you will take away today. So yeah, first let me talk about, how do we read and show from an image. So jumping right into it, like how do you read and show into an image? So for doing that, firstly, you need to use something called the CV2 IM read function. And the syntax for it reads that CV2 IM read part to the image. And to show an image, we use like an IM show function. So it's like pretty intuitive, right? IM read and IM show. And the syntax is CV2 underscore IM show and the image as such. So let me now jump right onto it. Can someone drop the link to the Collab notebook? Or I can do. Okay, thanks, Soumya. So yeah, let me first jump right onto it. So yeah, so installing OpenCV as such. So to install OpenCV, it's already there on Collab. So I don't think you need to worry about that. But in case you're doing it on your own devices, it's pip install OpenCV-Python. So yeah, as I said, working with images. So, we can.
Yeah, Archana. We'll give them a second to set up the Collab notebook. Just so that they
Sure.
can be parallel with you.
Yeah, that's a great point. So to set it up, you need to go to File and you need to click on Save a Copy in Drive. And that will immediately save a copy and open it on your end. Since I guess everyone has just view access, so they'll have to probably do this to use that. Okay. Yeah, let us know if you have got the Collab notebook set up. If you have any, if you're facing any issues, just let us know that as well. Again, it's like an open forum, so it'll be great if you guys can let us know if you're having any issues. And none of you are being recorded. The only person who's being recorded is my face and the video as such, so that other people can come look at it again. Apart from that, nothing else is being recorded. So guys don't need to worry that maybe your information is getting saved or people will know whether or not you are doing something. It's completely fine. So feel free to be as vocal as possible about what's going on. So yeah, thank you so much. I guess some of the folks have set it up. If you haven't, let us know in the chat. I'll stop at any time. And so yeah, let me first go on to that. So as you know, when you work with libraries, you have to import them in Python. So you do import, and you also import IM show. This is because Google Colab uses it this way. So you need to import that. And then let me run that. Okay, so then we will do something called wget. So wget is used to wget is used to get the image. So out here, just do wget an image. You can actually put any image here. So it's not like super necessary. So let me like go, like I was just searching for, like if you want to like change like the image address, so Spider-Man, and then I just went to images. And yeah, you can just click on anything and you can just do a copy image address, and that should give you the image address to paste it there. So yeah, and you can basically change it in this wget place. That's exactly how you get images. So feel free to get any other image that you want as well. Okay, so after we have done that, first, as I said, we'll read an image from the path. So firstly, we will define the path. So once you do this, you should be able to go to your file explorer and see that the image has been downloaded. So let me see. Yeah, sorry, there's so many things inside it, but yeah, your image should be downloaded already. I'm surprised the session didn't get refreshed. Just give me one moment. While I just refresh the session for you. I lose out on most of it. So one thing about Colab is every time you refresh it, ideally you shouldn't have anything in your file, right? Your this gets empty. So which is actually a bad function, but yeah, it's serving useful at this point. So yeah, let me, it still persisted, I don't know how. Okay, so let me run this. And yeah, and once you run this, you should be able to read the path. So, okay, so our path is saved here as this. So we read that. And then we do image is equal to CV2 IAM read path. So you're reading the path from the image and then you're trying to show the image. So as I said, right, IAM show. So the CV2 underscore IAM show an image which corresponds to the path of the image. So yeah, you run this and ideally you should be able to see the image. Yeah, so this is like one of the images I took. And yeah, and then let us now jump back in. I hope that was understandable. You have to run the CV2 underscore IAM show function to actually show the image. Okay, next, let us look at image processing and come into like, the crux of it, how do we do image processing and some other image processing techniques. Like, first of all, let's try blurring an image. So blurring is basically, as you know, you're trying to make it a little more like hazy. So for doing that, we use something called a median filter. Now the median filter, it uses a linear size to blur, like, a pixel size which you define to make sure it's blurred to that much. So hence it has to be like it's defined as odd. It has to be an odd number and it has to be greater than 1. So the syntax is basically median blur, that is CV2 dot median blur, and then image comma the k size. So k size here is the linear size. And then we can also grayscale images. So grayscale, what you're trying to do is essentially you're trying to firstly read the path of the image. So it's different from doing the others. In here, you're reading the path to the image. And then since it's grayscale, we'll add 0 to it. And then it'll turn the image into grayscale. So it is CV2 IAM read path comma 0. So that's the difference between both of them. It's over here, you're using the image directly. Here, you're using the path. So let me go back to it. So for example, you have to turn it to grayscale, as I said. So you just give it like, you run it as image to grayscale, then you give cv2.im read, and then you give the path, and then you give comma 0. So that should turn your image to grayscale. Now, if you're trying to blur the image, as I said, we use something called median blur. So there are actually 3 to 4 blurring techniques, but median blur is something which is pretty straightforward. So yeah, so median blur is something you can use. And I gave it, like, as I said, an odd number, and it has to be greater than 1. So yeah, we can even try seeing what happens if it's like, so here it blurred it a little as comparison to this. You can see the image is a little blurred. Maybe we can try increasing it and seeing. Let's see what happens. Yeah, it got a little more blurry, but yeah, significant difference is not so visible. Okay, so yeah, that is one thing you can do, blur the image. Let us look at some more things you can do with OpenCV. Firstly, you can also run an edge detection. So edge detection is basically you're trying to figure out the edges of a screen. You're trying to figure out blur with, that's a good question. So Annie asked, like, what happens if you actually run blur with even numbers? So it's used to define the pixel size. So the greater the pixel size, the better the blur will be. And also, why is it odd and even is a good question. I think it's because it's a median filter. They define it as odd. So that's why they're taking it as an odd value. But yeah, I'll have to look into why it's an odd and even thing. But you can look into OpenCV2 docs. They define it there, but according to me, it's just defined for the sake of the filter size. But sure, that's a really great question. For edge detection, we use something called canny function. So what canny does is basically define the edges. And the way that it defines the edges is that, sorry, Yeah, it can help you detect like multiple types of edges, and it basically defines a threshold. So you basically tell it, okay, this is the threshold of the image, and if I go above it, then my edges sort of become more defined. So let us take a coin for example, right? So coin can have like an edge of the coin can also be an edge, but the characteristics inside it can also be detected, right? So if you have a lower threshold, then the coin's outer part is detected, but as in when you go inside the coin, there are parts of the coins which are detected, and that is where you can use this threshold function to better understand that. And so yeah, so it uses CV2 Canny, it uses image threshold X, threshold Y. And for resizing, you just need to specify the height and width of the image you want to resize. So it's as simple as cv2.resize image height comma width. Okay, let me now go back to it so that I can show it. So as I said over here, it's like, we are using Canny to detect the edges. And then we are defining we're defining 50, 100. I'll also try to define like larger numbers and see what happens. I haven't tried it out, but yeah, so this is what happens in edge detection. So it's basically trying to detect all the edges in the image, right? So let me make it a larger number for now and see. So I haven't tried this before, so I'm not very sure how well it will work. So yeah, as in when you're increasing it, you're losing out on edges. Let me try a really low number, 10, 40. Okay. Yeah. So lower the value, the better the edges on the image. So yeah, you can play around with it to learn more. So I got another question. Is there a sharpen image command? So there's no sharpen image. It's more like you're trying to figure out the edges in the image. There is a way to denoise the image, but sharpening, I don't think there's a direct thing that exists. I also got a question. What is OpenCV? So OpenCV is this very widely used open source library for image processing, and it's a good starter for getting into computer vision. And mostly all computer vision applications use this. So yeah, this is like edge detection. So you can, play with the threshold value. And you can also do image resizing. For doing image resizing, you can basically describe like the image height and width you want. So, it can be very small as well. So 100 cross 300 or 100 cross 100. Okay. So the image goes smaller. So this function is actually used a lot in deep learning as such, if you think about it, because we do data augmentation, we do image resizing a lot. Yeah, you can combine multiple functions. So combining multiple functions is also easy. All you need to do, and I think I'll show it to you as well later on in one of my applications, like especially for video processing right now, you need to just use it in a multiple manner. So it can be cv2.imshow, and again, it can be cv2.resize. So it's like one after the other. So it's just a way to define it. It's like it just calls from the OpenCV library. That's it. So you can use it in a multiple manner as well. Out here, I've just displayed it one after the other, so it's easier to differentiate. Okay, so we have looked at like some of the image processing techniques, and I hope it's a good starter into what you can do with images. Let us look at video processing. That's another thing which is widely used for. So for with video processing, you can basically capture the image and save the frames. So capture an image, you use something called a cap function. And here is when you get the images frames from the video. So as you know, video can contain multiple frames, right? And read it while it's true, and then you display it. And once the frames are shown, you can basically save the frames, and you can save specific amount of the frames as well. This means like, you don't want to save all frames, you can do that as well. And in the end, you destroy all windows once it's done. So let me go back to how it looks like. So, okay, so for video processing, this is like the one of the videos I took. So it was just like some video online that I took. So let me help you with this again. I think you can go to this link and see. Let me see. Yeah, so this is like the video I took. So this is like some open video, yeah, some free videos online that I took from. So it is basically some highway, it looks like, but yeah. So this is the video that we will be using. So you can always use wget. You can just do exclamation wget and get it, and it will usually save it to your file. And after that, you basically run this mp4 command, and then you give the path to the video exactly how you gave it for the images. So the images, well, you gave the path right in the start. So here it's path to the video. So you give the path where it exists, and then you do cap is equal to cv2 dot video capture path to the image. This is where the cap basically gets the video capture. So here, so you're able to get the video capture from it. And then if cap is open, like, so this is where you're using a bit of more programming. So back there it was direct, but here it's getting a bit more into it. So you can, as you can see, what you're trying to do here, as I said before, you're trying to see if there is a frame that exists, and if there is a frame that exists, can I save the frame or can I show it? And that's all you're basically doing in this entire piece of code. If cap is open is equal to false, then there's an error. So this is basically like a disclaimer sort of thing you can consider. You know, if they see there is no video present, so you say error in opening video file. If not, you basically say if cap is opened, then you get two things out of this. What are the two things you get? First, you get the frame, because the frame is necessary and you want to display the frame. Then you get something called ret. So ret is basically a way to see if there is anything in the frame. So you make sure that there is something being displayed all the time. So if there is something being displayed, if ret equal to true, you make sure you're able to write the frame. And then you do count plus one. So this is something that I put. It's not super necessary to put it. It's all that you're making sure that when count is equal to 20, you're breaking out of the frame, so you don't keep it. So I'm just going to name it main, because for some reason my files are persisting. So yeah, so I'm going to run this as well. So I hope this was clear. And then you do cap.release to release like the video capture, and then you destroy all frames. One more thing you can use this for, which is it's widely used for, you can basically connect like a camera, like a camera, external camera you have to it, and you can capture from that. For example, if you have a Raspberry Pi camera, you can capture it from that. And that is where release and destroy all windows is useful, right? Because you're able to run it for a certain period of time when the video is present, and then you destroy all frames and you release it at that point. So that's another place where capture is used really well, is for getting it directly in real time basis. This is something we're getting from a video from a path, right? But the ideally the best use case would be you use it for real time as well and check it out. So yeah, let me run this and see how it does. So let's see, too many of my images. So yeah, it was able to save the frames. Let me now check. I'm getting a lot of messages. Let me check that as well. Okay. Let me know if it makes sense. So here, as you can see, it's able to save it. Yeah. So yeah, as you can see, it's able to save the frames. And let me check as to where did it save this. Oh, I think it saved too many images. But yeah, this is actually saved from before. But let me save it from some other name and try again. Just give me one moment. Let's see. Oh, yeah, it went out. Log me out.
You can probably stop the session and retry it again. you know the RAM disk place, right? You can probably close the session so it will all come back to you. No, not there. You see the RAM and disk?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So manage sessions, and then you can terminate the current session.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's great. Thanks for that. Yeah. I think I need to terminate it because it's still persisting from before. Let me try connecting them. Okay, so learned a new hack as well. Thanks for that. So,
Yeah. So someone, could you see the Q&A? So someone has an error opening the video file.
yeah, I think like it's something new that's happening. Let me see. Maybe it's like you need to save it in the right manner. I'll check it as well. Okay. Let us try running this again and seeing as to where the error is coming from. Okay. Oh, sorry, save twice. Okay. My bad. Okay. So I hope there is part two. Oh yeah, sorry. I need to run this. Okay. Okay, so here you're giving the path edit on this, right? Yeah, it's none. Okay, so now let us see as to where is the issue coming from. Oh yes, this is not running. I don't know if it's an issue with the video or what is happening as such. Let me check. Okay. Okay, get where the issue is coming from. I am getting the frames. Is it not able to open this video all of a sudden? Yeah. Demos, huh? Okay. Let's see, do that. Check that as well. New. Oh, I made that change just to see if it was there before. So because my files were persisting, I just made like a change to the folder. There's nothing there as such. I mean, it won't cause an issue. We can take turn with that one. Okay, let me check as to why this is happening. Probably some stupid mistake I'm making.
Maybe once check the file path, could that be it? Like the name, if it's correct. Maybe
Yeah,
copy the name over.
yeah, I think it could be that, but it's nothing new. Let's see. Okay. I'll debug this and get back. Not to worry. I'll check as to why this is happening. Let me move on to the next, but I will debug it while you guys figure something out. Don't worry. Okay, so yeah, the best thing about demos is that they fail, right? But nevertheless, let me go back to it. The function is probably right and just needs a few tinkering here or there. But thank you for bearing with me. And so yeah, let me move on to the first use case we have, which is a face detection. I wanted to use this actually an old classifier which is used. I mean, it's still used in a lot of like you know, face detection algorithms now. It's widely used, but it's not as widely used as what you would say is machine learning or deep learning is. I mean, it's still pretty much the standard, but it's not something new, so as to say. So yeah, so there's something called Haar cascades. So this framework was suggested by Voila Jones, which helps to detect images using edge and line detection. I won't get into a lot of math in this, but if you look at something on your right, so it's basically detecting the edges and the lines using these, you know, three types of features, so as to say what Haar contains. Is firstly, it contains something called edge feature, then it has the line feature, and then it has something called the rectangular feature. And what it does is it uses these all of these features in a cascading manner, so one on top of the other, and it runs it throughout the image. And then what it does is it has a learning rate on top, which helps to learn which parts of the image might contain a face. So it basically says that, okay, if it's not a face, I'm going to classify it as weak. If it is, I'm going to classify it as strong, and then I'm going to figure out which part of the image is a face. So that is what I'll be using. And as you know, most things we do in Python now, we do it as a, you know, one liner, but this is what it's doing underneath. So yeah, let me go back to it and check. So okay, so here you again need to get this image. You can get any image. I use something called this, which is some image I got out of the internet again. So yeah, use any image that you want, just needs to have a face in it. And then you read from the image. So you read the, you know, you do cv2.im read to read from the image. And then here you use face cascade, which uses Haar cascades in the backend. So you use something called, you call basically the XML file for Haar cascades, and then you change the, you know, you change the file to from grayscale to yeah, BG color. So yeah, you change it over here, and then you run it on a multi-scale manner. So yeah, this is also something pretty interesting. So multi-scale basically means that OpenCV will take the image and scale it to different heights, and then run the Haar cascade on different heights. So it essentially means you're trying to make sure that this runs in a really good manner, that it's able to learn in a better manner since it's scaling at different levels. So 1.3 is the type of scale. So you can take it from a certain level to 1.3 times of the image. And 5 here means that it's finding out its 5 nearest neighbors. So it'll detect like in a multi manner. So 5, it can also detect like 5 people, 5 faces on its adjacent, so on its neighbors. So that is what this means. So for doing that, you basically define the rectangle where the where you have to, for example, if it's my image, my face, you need to figure out a rectangle around my face. So for that, you have to define the x, y, and w and h. So x and y is basically the coordinates, and w and h is the width and the height. So, and then 255 comma 0 comma 0, I don't know if anyone guessed this, but this is like the hex value or the value that you need to give for the color of the rectangle, and 2 is like the width. So yeah, so when you run this, let me, yeah, so this is the image I took. So this is what it came here. So here, as you can see, right, x and y, how it was used. So I think if you start from the top, if I'm correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah, it's like the top left. You do x plus w, you should reach here. Then y plus h, you should reach the thing below. So it'll help you get the entire rectangle. So that is why we are doing x plus w, y plus h to get the rectangle. But yeah, this is what you do in order to detect faces, and you can use this. It's actually used in a very popular manner, Haar cascades. I don't know if you like, if anyone is from university is planning to take a computer vision class or something close to it, they'll probably teach you about all of this, because Haar cascades is like a very, very famous type of, yeah, you know, type of way to detect faces. and it involves quite a bit of extensive theory as well behind it. But I would like say that if you're interested in how exactly it works and its nitty-gritties, go ahead and check out the paper by Viola Jones. It was released somewhere in 2001. So yeah. And yeah, it came way before our current deep learning algorithms, so it's actually pretty famous as such, I would say, because it's one of the things which is still like survived and been used for a long time. And yeah, so that's pretty much it about face detection. Before I go back and check why the video wasn't working, I want to give a chance to talk about Hacktoberfest. So Hacktoberfest, as you know, so what exactly is Hacktoberfest? How many of you have participated in Hacktoberfest before, or at least had a chance to know what it is about? Let me see the chat. So no. Okay. Great. I mean, it's good to know that you haven't yet, because we're going to give you a chance to participate in it. So Hacktoberfest is actually an open source initiative which is run for the month of October. So let me just go here to the Hacktoberfest website so that you can also check it out. So yeah, so this is what the Hacktoberfest website looks like. So it's basically there to sort of, so what we realized a lot in the programming community is that you'll realize you'll use like OpenCV, you'll use anything you use, especially from Python as well. Most of it is open sourced. And obviously someone built it and someone is helping to maintain it. So there's a lot of work that goes behind open source, and it's often not accredited and often not given the due credit it needs to, right? But believe it or not, open source is what drives our industry, right? I obviously business also drives it, but one of the major things which helps us developers every day is open source. So it's important to give back to the community if you've learned something, and the best way to do that is open source. And there are various reasons why you want to be involved with open source, right? Firstly, it can be that you are searching for a mentor. It's a great place to search for a mentor. For example, you learned about OpenCV today, and I hope I got you a little interested. And if I did, like, you go search for someone who's doing OpenCV extensively too, you can find out through their GitHub repos. You can go search for maintainers for OpenCV and see who is doing it. And maybe you can follow them, and then, you can get inspired by their work. One another reason for doing open source is recognition, right? I know, like, we must have heard this a lot of times, and I know a lot of companies who use this as a metric to how many PRs are you using or doing in GitHub, like how many pull requests are you making, are you active on GitHub as such, and they use that even as a metric to hire, right? So it's very important to be a part of this open source community as such. And for doing that, like, one of the ways to do that is to get involved with Hacktoberfest. And it's great because this month is of October, and any PRs you make can be counted towards it. And so, one second, yeah. So Hacktoberfest is, like, as I said, you get recognized for your open source contribution. But as I said, why do OSS, like, you get recognized, you have a chance to be a part of like a global community, and you also get goodies. So this time, like, Hacktoberfest is giving away t-shirt and stickers if you make a certain amount of PRs. So it's like 4 PRs you need to make, and if those 4 PRs get accepted, you get t-shirts and stickers. And also, if you're someone who is like who wants to give back to the environment and wants to do that, they also are planting trees. So for the number of PRs you make, they're planting trees accordingly. Go check it out. And so yeah, how can you get involved? I hope you got you a little interested at least on this open source contribution. Doing that, you need to sign up to GitHub or a GitLab account, and then you need to make sure you sign up on the official Hacktoberfest website, right? So let me show it. No. Yeah, so you need to register here. So just click on start hacking, and it should like connect to your so this is my profile, but yeah, it should connect to your GitHub account. So it will say sign up with GitHub or sign up with GitLab. So just make sure you sign up with whichever place you have an account. So if you have GitHub, sign up with GitHub. And yeah, and then after that, you have to basically search for repositories which have a Hacktoberfest topic on it. You read through the code carefully and you figure out where to commit. And you can make a pull request to the repository by using a Hacktoberfest tag. So this is pretty important. When you make a pull request, just make sure you're using the Hacktoberfest tag. And you need to at least make 4 commits with the Hacktoberfest tag by October 31st, 2021. And just, if it is done that, and all of your 4 commits are merged, then yeah, hooray, you are you've successfully completed Hacktoberfest. So it's pretty amazing, because a lot of people who are even pro don't end up doing that. And so, not to get you intimidated, but it's something that once you get into it, it is pretty easy. So it's just about like a mentality to get into. And so yeah, so I wanted to combine both of them and try getting Hacktoberfest and OpenCV together. And one such place to do so was to make a cheat sheet, right? I mean, I ran through a few codes today, and there was just a lot of them are one-liners. So I thought, why not make a cheat sheet and get all these things together? So we're gonna make a cheat sheet together. So that's something we're gonna do. We're gonna do it a little differently, where all of us are gonna contribute to the cheat sheet, and that way we're gonna be part of Hacktoberfest. And these steps for contribution can be found in the README file. And so let me walk you through that as well. So okay, so this is what it looks like. I hope someone can drop the link, or maybe I can.
Yep, I've done it.
Okay, thanks. So yeah, so we're gonna so as I said, you can just open this link and you can go through this README. So it talks about how exactly you can contribute. So you need to navigate to opencvcheatsheet.md, which is this file. And then it has various topics under it. So like today, as we talked about, working on images, working with videos as such. So yeah, this has to be changed to videos, but yeah, nevertheless. So let me show it to you. Okay. So yeah, so working on images, you have categories like read an image from path, image resizing, blurring an image, grayscaling of images. You can also add something of your own. But yeah, these are the things that we covered today. And working with videos, how to play videos with OpenCV and extract frames from videos. So both of it was already there. The code is already there. And so yeah, you just navigate to it and you choose an area where you want to contribute, like which heading you want to contribute under. For example, you want to contribute under grayscale of images, so you can choose that, and you check if the code has been added already. If not, you click on this pencil button at the top to edit, like I did. So I clicked on that pencil button and this came up. And then you basically add like a code format here. So what you do is, so for example, we learned that grayscaling of image, or let me try and remember, like, this is like read an image was I am read. So yeah, it's like CV2. So you can just put the code as something like code is and like it has some image, right? Or part to the image. Part to image. And then you can give that, and then you can give the sample code that you want to be like the sample code, and then you can link the Jupyter notebook you have. Okay, so yeah, this is how you can basically add code here, and that's as simple as that you need to do. Once you're done doing that, you just go here and you click on create a new branch. So make sure you click on that. You won't get the first option at all. You'll probably only get the second option. And then you'll be like, yeah, I want to propose changes. You can name it anything. The only thing is it has to be without spaces. And you click on propose changes. And once you click on propose changes, it'll basically take you to another window as such. And here, like, make sure you write a title. So here you can like write like, I'm updated it, I've added something, and you can leave a comment as well or some description, like what you have changed in the file. This is so that when I merge it, I know what exactly you have done. And then one more thing which is super important that you need to do is click on the label and then click on Hacktoberfest. So this is how, it'll be labeled as Hacktoberfest. And once I check the code, I'll just make it Hacktoberfest accepted, and it'll be counted towards your PRs. And that's pretty much it. It's like a very easy process. There's not a lot of things that you need to do, for example, from GitHub desktop. For sure, like the UI is really good, so you can use that itself to commit. And it's something we have made really beginner friendly to make sure you have a chance to commit. So let me know if you have any questions here or anything I can help out with. So this is like the basic process. And don't forget to register on the Hacktoberfest website, and the PR will like be merged in a day or two. But keep checking the PR in case people can drop in comments like, maybe change this, maybe change that. So you change it, and we'll commit it. So like we'll merge it off. So yeah, that's like the basic idea here. And yeah, I've also listed down some resources. So this is like Learn OpenCV and Geeks for Geeks for OpenCV, both of which I used today to create the presentation. So it's going to be something which is really simple. So don't worry, you can just use the code from there and add it here. You just need like a syntax so people can read. And the idea I have in the end is that, we have everything over here. So you can go ahead and check it out later on. You have all the different easy to do code with OpenCV. So with OpenCV, the necessity is not that you remember how the syntax is. The important thing here is that you're able to use it. If you're able to use it, you're good enough. I don't think anyone in programming expects you to learn syntax all the time. The idea is that you're able to programmatically use it, and you're able to, understand how it works, maybe underneath a bit, so that next time something happens, you're able to debug. And so which reminds me, I need to fix the thing for video too. But I think we are pretty much done. So let me know if you have any questions. I'm going to quickly stop sharing. I'm just going to look at the code and see why it's not working.
Archana, I can help you with that actually. So the reason
Sure.
you're getting error is because you've released it. So that's why you would have to run the thing on top again. You're releasing it, right? So that's why it's coming as an error when you rerun it. So if you run the code on top where it gets the video link again, then it would work. But just one suggestion, could you go down a bit? No, not that one. Yeah, so in this one, there's frames, right? A little top on top, there's a folder. Yeah, so take out the folder name, in I am right, and even the /, I guess.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so you can run the cell on top. No, the cell on top would get the video capture, right? So
Yeah.
once you run this and the one on the bottom, it should work. I tried
Okay.
it out.
Awesome. Thanks, Soumya. Let me see if it works. Yeah.
So because you're releasing it here, you're gonna get an error if you run it again. So if you try running this cell again, you're gonna get an error because you've released it already. So if you
yeah.
run the thing on top, it'll come back again.
Yeah, smart catch. Yeah, thanks, Soumya, for that. I think it's fixed now. I think it should be fixed for everyone, right? So as Soumya said here, that we are releasing it. So once we release it, it's not, the video is essentially lost. So we'll have to run the previous cell to start it again. So yeah, let me know if
Yeah,
this makes sense. Yeah,
and I'm not sure if I am right creates a folder if it doesn't exist. So that's another reason why you're probably not getting it. Maybe it doesn't find the frames folder, and that's why they're not getting saved in a folder like that. I'm not sure if I am right creates a folder if it's not existing. So just remove that, it will be there in our current one.
Let us see if it creates it like this. I mean, please feel free to drop the questions. We are just figuring something out like on our own. It's not important to yeah. Let me try running it again. Let me remove the release, because I guess the release makes much more sense when you're getting it real time. Okay. Oh yes, it worked. Smart. Okay. Yeah, so as you can see, it has saved images from 0 to 19, since we didn't actually, we just said 0 to 20. So it has saved all 19 frames. You can increase it by whichever count you want it. Let's try like increasing it by 200. One more thing you can do here is, before I do that, is let me remove this altogether. Let's see how the frames turn up. Okay, so here I'm just gonna run it without the without saving the frames, and so you can see the frames being captured one by one. So it's gonna capture a lot of frames because it captures it every second. So that's another interesting thing which I realized that I should have mentioned here, is something called FPS, which is frames per second. So what does frames per second really mean is the amount of frames it's able to capture per second. So when you say that, my system, or my the detection I'm running is as good as 40 FPS, it only means it's able to detect 40 frames at once. So ideally, like if you'll be working in this field, they'll ask you like, okay, how well is your algorithm performing? How well is it able to capture from the frames? So the higher the amount of FPS, the better it performs. So if it's like 100 FPS, it means it's able to calculate 100 frames per second, and so on. And yeah, so as you can see here, you can get a lot of these frames together from the image. Feel
We
free to
also
try
have one
your,
question on the Q&A.
yeah.
Related to probably one of the later cells in the code.
Yeah, scaling, right? So I think scaling was there. Just one second. Okay, scaling was there here, right, somewhere. Okay. Yeah, I think scaling we were doing with, which function was I doing scaling with? I think, yeah, when I was saying that it's 1.3, you can basically make it a better number too. It just means that the the s- the image will be scaled to that level. Let me show you, if I can show you what the scaling of images means. Okay. It's a, like, I think like a image will do much better, but the idea is that you're able to scale it. Oh my god. Okay, too many things showed up, but okay, the idea is that you're able to basically take the image from a smaller size to a bigger size. You can almost imagine it as a graph, right, one on top of the other. And so yeah, you can use like a variable function there and get like better scale of images as well. So you can try using 2. It will be like, you're making it learn on a larger scale than that. That's it. Maybe you can try using 2 and seeing how it works. But even with 1.3, it was able to pick up well. So yeah, let me see if there are any other questions. Do let me know. Oh, my internet is slow. Anyway, do let me know if you have any questions. If you want me to run some part again, I can try doing that. It could probably be because of this, because I let it run for a longer time. Okay. So it will take some time to interrupt it, but nevertheless, let me know if you have any questions. I would love to answer. I hope the session was fine. I know we stopped a little in between, but I hope it was still like something you guys were able to learn something new. And I hope by watching us debug, you were able to realize that it happens to everyone and it's okay to face errors while you are doing something. So I mean, if nothing, it should encourage you guys to let me know if you have any issues, and to let me know if you have any questions. Yeah, that's a good question. How would you adjust face detection from an image with many faces? So out there, as I said, right, the neighbor part, it's 1.3 comma number. which is the multi-scaling function, takes into account. So out there it's defined as 5, which means that every feature detected, it's going to detect like 5 near it. So now you can decide to increase it. So if you increase it, ideally it would take more time as such, because the learning would take a longer time, but I think it doesn't matter as such for this. But like in the long run, you could make it much better with, for example, 6, 7. So I think that number should ideally indicate more faces to be detected. So yeah, so I let my cell to be running for a long time and it crashed. But nevertheless, let me know if you have any question. I hope that answers your question. I think there's a multi-scaling function there, which is like detect multi-scaling or something of the sort. Yeah, multi-scale if I'm not wrong. So that is the function that you'll have to use to run it. Okay, I hope I've got you guys interested enough. Like, feel free to go ahead and do a merge here. We would love to see more PRs turn up, and fill up this cheat sheet. I hope you're able to learn something new. And as I said, it's not like, don't get like overwhelmed with, oh no, I just listened to this thing for half an hour or 45 minutes and I probably don't know a lot. It's fine. I've literally picked up things from these resources. I've also followed them. It's not something I have spoken out of thin air. So just go through these tutorials. They have covered a lot of things on its own, and so you can just try looking at it, and it has the script already. Just try understand it, maybe run it on your own, and then add it to the cheat sheet. That's all. Like, if you try running one of the easy ones, I think it'll barely take you like 10-15 minutes. And if the code is right and if it runs, we'll immediately merge it, so it'll be counted as a pull request you can make. And it's a great thing because when people go to your, for example, your profile as such, it'll turn up on it, so it'll show that you're committed to this. So like, for example, if you go to mine, I think somewhere you can also see, so long time back, I did like a very small PR, like very small change to some code of Nvidia's, and you can see it on my profile now. So it's like, um, let me try searching so that you guys can see how it looks for bigger places. Mhm. Anyway, let me know if you have any more questions that I could answer. Yeah, it was this. So this was like Nvidia's official repository. That's another thing, most PRs, my PR got merged in like very late, but sometimes PRs get merged like a little earlier. It depends really. But yeah, you could basically make like changes to this over time. So yeah, you could do things like that. This is post. Let me check for some other thing that I made. This is for post. Yeah, it is this one. So nevertheless, you can watch me searching for it always. But yeah, I can let you know, like, once you do that, I think it's over here as well that you can see. So if you do it with Womenu Code Python, for example, you can immediately get it, like you can get your name here on contributors. So if you merge it here, your name will be here on our contributor list, which is pretty great because I know our PR, like our repo is basically like, it seems like it's all but information, but we do have like great stars to it, and a lot of people watch it as well. So yeah, I mean, if you make a PR here, it's something which will be impactful. So I think like you should, if you definitely need a place to start, this is a good place to do so. Okay, nevertheless, I'll stop sharing. Do we have any more slides to go on? I think like, yeah, I just have like 1 or 2 more slides. So yeah, references, Geeks for Geeks, Learn OpenCV. And we have a few upcoming events. So on 18th October, I guess it is for most people on the Eastern time zone. We have Less is More. We have this amazing lead course series group that's going on. And we also have Bytes and Brews coming up, and the Python library is again coming up next Saturday. So a lot of great events happening back to back. So make sure you check it out. And yeah, thank you so much. Follow us on social media. We're there on Python, we're there on Twitter, we're there on Facebook, we're there on Instagram as well. And thank you so much, everyone. I hope it was informational, and thank you so much for joining in.